Welcome to Intro Psych Sessions, the second season, where I will rethink my entire Intro Psych course from beginning to end, asking friends and experts to help me figure out how to put it together in a way that implements recommendations and integrates the skills and knowledge that I want to give to my students. And who better to join me on this adventure, co-hosting the series with me, than Dr. Regan A.R. Gurung. This is Intro Psych Sessions Season 2, and I hope that these conversations will help you as you think about your students and your own intro course. Let's get to it. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Endless distractions, overbooked schedules, information overload. Students face so many barriers to being fully engaged with their schoolwork. That's why Macmillan Learning's Achieve for Psychology gives you the tools you need to keep them focused on your course, before, during, and after class. Whether it's the exclusive author-created content, captivating footage in our Introductory Psychology video collection, or the self-evaluation of our goal-setting and reflection surveys, Achieve helps students stay focused on the course and makes it easy for them to tell you when they need extra help. See for yourself. Go to macmillanlearning.com/psych sessions 2023 special for an introductory tour today. Macmillan's Achieve for Psychology, engaging every student, supporting every instructor, setting the new standard for teaching and learning.
Because it's all about me. Obviously.
Yeah, it is about you.
It is about me. It's all about me, Noland. It's all
always. It's always about you, Garth.
Hey, you sound great, my friend.
Woo. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
yeah. He's going to break into a little ditty right now.
Yeah, so, you look great. You sound great.
And I can see the album right now. Songs for barbecuing.
Exactly. I didn't tell you, Regan. I actually did cook on Wednesday. Had a neighborhood gathering, and so I had lots of lofty plans, but the only thing I ended up cooking on the smoker were some sausage balls. So,
oh man, don't make me hungry.
I know.
So that we don't get more hungry. Welcome. I'm gonna take the lead kicking off this little chat here. It is really nice of you to join us at this end of semester, end of term, end of year. But it's a really neat time to reflect. I mean, I always find myself right after our term, looking at my syllabus and going, how do I do stuff differently? And Noland, guess what? You are in for a treat, because you are going to get the fruits of Garth having sabbatical to reflect on how he does intro psych differently. And he invited me to join this very Garth focused podcast on let's see what we think about Garth's redesign of intro psych. But of course, for the benefit of our listeners, this opportunity to really think and talk redesign with other people who have been thinking about it for a long time is just a heavenly opportunity. I'll just say, I was going over my evaluations with my partner, getting some feedback on my take on some of them, and I love the way she said, some of these things are structural things and are not you things. And I'm like, yeah, no, I hear you. And she followed it up by saying, yeah, you should just talk with some of your psych buddies about it. So here it is. Here it is.
I love it.
Yeah. So starting, Noland, obviously you think about, you're a textbook author for intro. You've been thinking about and working with intro for some time. Maybe an interesting place to start, and Garth, this is not even what we talked about, but hey, how have you changed your course design thoughts once the APA recommendations and IPI work came out? Let's start big level, and then you can hear a little bit more about some of the things Garth's trying.
And let me just say this. I think, Regan, why you're asking that is that Noland has been kind of the first in line at almost every step of any APA IPI release. We were talking kind of in the background every time. You're reaching out and you're sharing what you're doing. You're asking questions about it. And I just remember you being kind of like first in line for every release, and you were chomping at the bit to figure out what are we going to do. So, to Regan's question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have definitely been excited ever since, any inkling of an idea related to APA, IPI was released. So thinking about how it's going to affect my classes and the things that I could do. And I've shared this in other conversations, as like you said, Regan, being associated with the textbook for me for many years, more years I can remember, I was that 15 chapter professor. We're going to cover every single freaking chapter because I want to see how it works in the classroom. And that for me was one of the hardest things to kind of change my mindset on. And so using the pillar model, that came out of the initial suggestions and then incorporated with the IPI, to me, that has been so helpful. Being able to look at, okay, you don't have to do triple and quadruple duty on every single one of these major topic areas. And so the ideas related to the integrative themes and making the content was kind of something that I think I was approaching, but I thought the IPI gave me a much better way of conceptualizing and being more intentional about specific themes to stay focused on and to help students with, knowing that some of our students are going to go on further in the major, many of our students are not, but what can I do to take best advantage of the IPI? And this is what I can accomplish this semester, So that's been like the biggest shift for me is moving from 15 chapters down. I've cut, I think, 4 chapters so far and one of my thought processes that I was looking at is right now I've cut 4 chapters, but I might mix it up from semester to semester. Yeah. Again, so I have a little bit of rotation with all of them and just seeing, I might even look at doing different themes between different years or different semesters. So that's what I'm really excited about.
I have 2 questions. Am I going to remember the second question? Okay. So here's the first question. Has your book, your textbook, have you thought about tackling, and I realize this is a very complex question for you from a publisher perspective, but have you thought about a version of your textbook that aligns itself to themes?
Yes.
Okay. Is that something that can get pulled off or are there too many barriers?
I don't know if it's going to be a theme specific AKA version.
They'll get layered on top, right?
Yeah. But and my thought process there, I can tell you from some initial discussions, there are individuals out there that want to have like a correlation matrix, like many textbooks have, like we had for the APA learning outcomes, where this is how the learning outcomes interact with the content and material and quote features of this text. There are other people that would like to have something that is more integrated, completely all the way through. And I am not sure what the best mix will be. And, I don't know if there is a best mix, but I know that different people want different things.
Regan, even both of those kind of options on the table are not probably what I'm talking about, because what I'm talking about is really out of the box, right? This is a 7-part textbook that has, I don't know. Well, I mean, there's other outcomes as well, right? But that a textbook structured in 7 sections to the 7 integrative themes, where we're throwing, it's not content or pillar based, as we've talked about before, right? This is just me playing right now. But Regan, have you? Well, and this is my question for you because you use an OER text. Will OER be the first place that we see that, or will we even ever see somebody try to pull that off?
Well, I think a couple of different responses. Number one, OER is the most flexible, right? OER is not bound by, I think, all the things that Noland is bound by and all the textbook authors are bound by, and that's good and bad. What I mean, it's good in that you can see something really experimental go out there with minimum financial loss or gain, but it's bad because the checks and balances for some OERs are not the same as the checks and balances that Noland has to go through, right? That said, though, I mean, there are. Let's remember there are a couple. You pulled up two really interesting things, Garth, when you talked about the pillars, and the reality is, I mean, those pillars are just taking what psychology has always done for a really long time. As luck would have it, Noland and I had a conversation very recently about what are the most important concepts and topics in psychology today, and I teased Noland with some work going on in my lab on how we're trying to come up with an answer to that, right? But I think that's important because whether it's the pillars or anybody content driven, we are basing ourselves on a model of what the main areas are, what the main chapters are, that has been in process for about 100 years. Yeah. So that's why I think, in answer to your question, Garth, this is the time. My guess, if I have a guess, is what we will see before. I mean, I think what Noland alluded to, the matrix of here are the chapters and here are which themes you can cover in which chapters. I mean, even over the last couple of years, some people have been putting that out there. Alison Melly's been doing some good work on that to try that and share it. I think that's an easy first step. And that always happens with recommendations, right? The textbook will have that little, here's how it maps on. But I think what we're positioned for, and I know a couple of people working hard to try and pull this off, is almost a supplement that is theme-based, because the reality is when you go theme-based, you're not going to squeeze in all the content in a 16-chapter book.
Right.
Yep. So here's what this reminds me of a conversation I recently had with Dave Myers, where in his new book, he skipped APA style altogether, right? So it's his new trade book. I'm sorry, his new trade book, right? Yeah. Obviously, a book like that doesn't read super well, in APA style. Now, I think actually that if Dave could, he'll disagree with me if I'm wrong, but I feel like he would write a textbook that is not an APA style. Anyway, that's off the mark. But here's what I'm thinking. Noland, I went through all the content of an intro psych course, like all of it, and then I picked and chose some things, and I want to ask you about that in a moment. But I now have this grid of it's an Excel spreadsheet with the 50 topics basically in content areas that I want to cover, and I tagged all the 7 themes to all of those. Just so I did it for myself, for my personal course, probably like what some of the publishers are doing for textbooks, layering them on top. So where are we hitting these things? And if so, where? Okay. So to answer my own question, I looked at one of those columns for whatever the theme was. Let's talk about the ethics theme or something like that. And I looked at all the content areas. There is no thread other than ethics. There's just no consistency. I don't know that you could write a textbook based on that. It would feel a little bit disjointed to me, but the course covers so much, it's disjointed in its current form anyway sometimes. But here's where I think, this is just occurring to me now, I do think a trade book on each of the 7 themes would be very interesting. It probably couldn't be one book on all of them, but I think I could see a 7-book series where somebody tackles this psychology theme and then writes kind of in more of a storytelling, but scientific storytelling way, how this works its way out in the science of psychology. So that's just me riffing. But here's my question, Noland.
So when are you going to put that book out? That's what I want to know.
I'm not putting that book out. Yeah. I think it might be a dumb idea. Somebody will message me. Hey, somebody out there, tell me why that's a dumb idea. And I'd be happy to hear you tell me why. But here's my question. Now I am completely, because we've gone to ebooks. Your book's an ebook now, right? As well as a hard book. Yeah. So now I am going one step further. I heard you say you've cut 4 chapters out. I am not covering full chapters. And I wonder if this drives an author crazy. I'm picking and choosing. I like this topic. I like this topic. Mm-hmm. My students don't need to know these 3 things. And I can do that. I use Revel. which comes from your company. But I can check box those things, and I just leave stuff out. Now, if I'm an author and I'm trying to tell a coherent story in a chapter, I think that's maddening that somebody would do that. But what do you think?
It's one of the things that I've been talking about, some discussions we had in the last several months, is I think that's one of the benefits of things like Revel. Now, you could already do that, in a printed textbook. It's like, discussions over the years about, well, why do you have the bio chapter second? Why is the memory chapter, chapter 6? It's like, they're just numbers. You can cover them in any order you want to. And here's a crazy thought. You don't have to cover all of a given chapter. And that's one of the things I think Revel makes it easier for, is that not only can you do exactly like you said, you can go through a given chapter and you can select those modules, those learning objectives that work best for you. But here's the crazy thing. When you got that calendar, guess what? You can take part of chapter 2 and you can intersperse part of chapter 4. And here comes some of, disorders. And then we can pull in some memory, and here's health, and here's gender, so you can do it in whatever you want to for the entire quarter, semester, whatever it is that you're teaching.
I love this. I love technology. I love this technology.
And what you're just saying, actually, Noland, you sort of answered Garth's earlier quandary, which is by doing what you just suggested, you can actually come up with a textbook, a thematic textbook.
Exactly.
It'll take a little bit of work, but good work. And but yeah, no, absolutely right. It's like you're curating Noland White's book to suit your thematic
now
approach
it's Garth
to class.
Neufeld. Now it's Garth.
There you go.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of it, because I think even though we're going to come up with some models and they're going to be people putting together these wonderful theme-based approaches, my theme-based approach is not going to be the same as Garth or as Regan's or anybody else's, but we can use them as models to help one another fit not only our goals, but also what's going to work best for our students or our students this quarter or this semester. And then we can maybe hey, this year I'm going to take a little bit different approach. And I think that's what's so great about this, looking at the different lenses that we could view these.
I've been using the metaphor of a road trip with teachers this last year, particularly related to intro psych, and I am doubling down on it because of what we're talking about right now, which is when you have your destination in mind in a course, your destination are your outcomes. Think about driving from the Pacific Northwest down to Georgia, where you are, Noland. You can choose almost an infinite amount of ways to get to the outcome. It's your values. It's you have to drive on a road, so that's content. That's the course, right?
You can choose to drive on a road. You don't have to drive on a road. That's true. There are set ways of going, right? But in the end, you get to your destination. So, and that's the backward design, right? We're going to start with our destination. We know we're going there. How are we going to get there? Well, that's a personal choice. And there's a million ways to ethically teach the introductory psychology class in a way that gives students the kind of overview of psychology. So I'm thankful to hear that you're okay with us not only picking and choosing, and you took it a step further and said, no, you can pull chapter 8 into chapter 3, or you could split chapter 8, which is always memory, right? We all know that. Chapter is developmental in ours.
Oh, is it? Okay. But you could actually split chapter 8 into chapter, like put some of it in chapter 2 and some of it in chapter 6 and some of it in chapter 13. I think what you're saying, Garth, too, that and taking that next step, kind of like what Regan was saying, is that we're going to get out of those content boxes. We're not going to think about chapter 2. We're not going to think about chapter 4. We're not going to think about chapter 14. We're going to think about, okay, for right now, I want to look at these different lenses in which we view the world. So I'm going to pull in these different pieces. I want to look at, here's how we're using the science. So I'm going to pull in these aspects across multiple parts of content to help me reach that goal. And so
I think the content being broken up into chapters is nothing that's going to, I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. Because as much as some of us are excited about the possibility of bringing in these kind of integrated approaches, there are going to be people that don't want any changes, and because it doesn't work for them right now, that it doesn't meet their learning outcomes right now. So it's not, we can't break away from that established structure right away for everybody. But for some people, having things like Revel, having these other platforms where we can mix and match what works best for us, I think is pretty exciting.
Yeah. Regan, I'm really happy with what I'm using right now. And this is where I think, I think that publishers, and not only Pearson, but the big ones, the Macmillan, the McGraw-Hill, the Norton, whatever. Sorry for those I'm missing. They all are kind of have built these systems that are kind of customizable, right? And is this one of the ways I don't know the OER world well, but can OER pull that off?
Well, I think, the OER world, I think there are two levels here. There's the OER world, and then there's what I like to call the OER plus world. Okay. So the OER world, pretty hard to, the OER world, there are many OER books that you can customize, similar to what Noland said, right? Move pieces around. The granddaddy of them all, the NOBA project, you can pick and choose whichever chapters you want and actually put it together as a Garth Neufeld or Regan Gurung or Noland White book, right? Literally pulling together chapters. Now, can you pull together pieces as much? Not so much in a lot of those things. The sophistication is not necessarily there, but there are now this growing breed of OER plus Lumen Learning, for example. You can do, Nolan mentioned what Pearson can do, and Lumen Learning can do similar things with its book, but it's operating off an OER system, so it's cheaper, right? But it's not necessarily got all the bells and whistles that you may get with a big publisher. Yeah. So I think Nolan's point is the key one, where when we stop talking about silos, right? And I don't think it's going to be a very long time before we stop talking about silos, right? It is so entrenched in how we teach intro, right? But it doesn't mean it has to be that way. And I think what's more important, and this next comment won't surprise you, is we've got to empirically test whether doing it the silo way is as good or different than doing it the thematic way. Mm-hmm. What if we lose something by going the thematic way, right? If intro psych is the only psych course people are going to take, and I'm just saying if the thematic way means that student who's taking only one psych class does not now know some areas of psychology because we moved away from the pillars and content, that would be, I think we'd be remiss, right? But that's why I think as we do all these explorations, the Garth nice thing is, you're not going to be able to get away with your redesign without folks like me, particularly me, pestering you to assess everything about how it goes, right? But that's what we've got to do. We've got to do, how's it going to go? And even when I think about some of my grad students who are teaching a course for the first time, that first time is almost definitely not going to be like the second time, because you will, and something I like hassling Garth about, you've drawn up such a grand redesign of your course on paper. And I mean, literally on paper. You showed me the paper, right? And once you step into that classroom and do it with live individuals, all bets are off. And I think what's going to be great is revisiting this conversation a year from this December and going, so Garth, remember that chat with Noland?
It's true. Go.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so Nolan, along those lines, have you found yourself, do you set yourself a time for redesign, or is it literally every term as needed, you're doing some redesign?
Right now, I'm doing a little bit each term. So one of the things, and I think a couple of thoughts on what you were just saying. Number one, as far as comparing silos to this integrated approach, I think that if we ask students, consistent with much of the literature, I think if we take more of an interleaving approach, which I think the integrative themes do, I think during the process, some students are going to report not feeling as comfortable, and I think they're going to probably report they don't feel like they're learning as much. But I could only hope that at the end and if we look at longer term learning, that maybe some of it will stick a little bit longer by taking that integrated approach.
Yeah, that interleaving piece is big, and we do know that it's from the research that it's uncomfortable for students, and particularly from a kind of mastery perspective. You don't get there as quick, right? So right. But it's I agree with you that is probably better than grouping those themes and hitting the themes once in the class and then moving on to the next theme, right? It's got to be weaved in. Yeah.
The other thing I'd say I fully agree as far as the assessment piece, because, otherwise we don't know if we're actually helping students learn. So the last 2, maybe 3 semesters, however long it's been out, I've been using the APA IPI integrative themes assessment or assignment. And so far I've done it. I did it one time as a online submission and with not a whole lot of prep. I wanted to see kind of like what students could see if there was any latent learning related to the themes and so forth. This past semester, I took a more focused approach. We had at least 2 class periods where I pulled out like the activity and we actually went over it in class and gave them time to work together, and so that they could go through each of the themes as practice. Now, this was on top of going through the semester and trying to identify themes continuously through the semester, but I still had them do an individual assignment at the very end where they had time. They knew what I was going to ask them, and then they had time to submit their answers. I have not yet reviewed those, but I'm interested to see what they take away, because again, is it going to be more of that kind of interleaving? Can they pull it together, or is it going to be more of the content based that they're focused on?
What I love about that is that, and one of the things that sticks out is that you set aside class time. You found this to be important, and you set aside class time. In my assessment of the integrative themes, my students did not get them on their face. By reading a document, my students did not understand the integrated themes. They really, some of them are, you read it once and face value kind of makes sense. But not all of them are like that. And students don't understand how psychology connects to all of those. And so the fact that you take time aside, and this is a theme that's going through these conversations, is you've got to drop other things out of your class in order to make time to do that. But following that through to assessment, it's the right way to do things. And I say it's the right way because it's the way I'm doing things now in this course map. So thank you for validating it. Noland, we're almost out of time here, but I got to say this has been very, very helpful. It's confirmed kind of a lot of what I'm doing. I feel like I've got, and you know what? You do carry some weight. You and our other textbook author friends.
I carry a lot of weight.
But you and our other textbook author friends, you're in the trenches of intro psych, and in a different way, and you've been thinking about it really hard for a long time. And so when I ask you a question like, can I break up the content of a chapter? Can I start taking things out of order? And you push further and say, yeah, you should even pull things into other chapters. Feel free to do that. I feel good about the direction I'm going, and it's really all about me feeling good, right?
Exactly. That's the most important thing
in life, in everybody's life. I feel good.
All right, I appreciate the chance to be here. And again, it's an honor to be asked to have these type of discussions. I mean, intro has been my favorite class ever since I started teaching, however many years ago, and to be able to have discussions like this with you and Regan and everybody else. I mean, I don't see of any other way of helping us to be more successful and helping our students to be successful unless we have discussions like this.
That's right.
Yeah, and I just want to underline as we close by saying, it's I hope listeners realize that these conversations are natural. I mean, the three of us on here have been teaching IntroPsych for, I want to guess, close to 70 years when you put the three of us together. And we're still having these conversations. So if you, listener, feel like you are so up in the air about how you're designing things, that's natural. And the fact that you care, I think, is the most important thing at the mall. So thank you again, Noland.
Yeah, thanks, Noland. And by the way, Noland, I heard you give a great talk on ADHD. I forget that you are also an expert on certain topics related to intro psych, like neuroscience and ADHD and those kinds of things. And I really appreciated that. I'd never heard you give a talk on it before. So if anybody ever gets a chance to hear Noland's talk on ADHD, especially with, I know it's adult ADHD has touched my life and like the lives of some people around me. And so that was just really helpful to hear. So anyway, thank you very
much.
Yeah. Thanks for all you do for the discipline, and nice to see you again, bud.
Take care.